Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fall to Ireland webinar on the Tourism Accommodation Providers Business Continuity Scheme. Delighted to have you all with us today. As you'd be aware, Minister Martin secured funding for the Tourism Business Continuity Scheme. And in terms of the first priority for us was really to concentrate on supporting a wide range of tourism businesses who did not qualify for CRSS. And that funding was really about helping those businesses meeting their ongoing costs. The next priority was really focusing on the primary drivers of demand, things to see and do in accommodation, and helping those businesses survive through 2021. So as you all are well aware, the accommodation sector supports tens of thousands of tourism jobs and provides considerably wider economic impact through facilitating tourism and local spend in a destination area. Fall to Ireland recognises the extent of the financial and trading difficulties experienced by the sector since the onset of the COVID crisis. And although many accommodation businesses have reopened since June the 2nd, restrictions due to the ongoing pandemic continue to impose significant commercial constraints on the sector. In particular, due to the reduction of international travel, there is a heavy reliance on domestic tourism in 2021 and into the medium term. So the aim of the scheme is to help enable you and your strategic tourism businesses to withstand the impact of COVID in the short and medium term by providing financial support, which will contribute to the sustainability, to your financial sustainability until the end of 2021. So during this webinar, my colleagues are going to take you through the details of the scheme, explaining who is eligible and how to apply. So without further ado, I will now hand over to Gail, who will start the process. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Jenny, for that introduction, and welcome everybody to the Tourism Accommodation Providers webinar. Today we're going to take you through the scheme itself and talk you through the application process. A lot of questions were sent in advance, and we get to as many of these as we can towards the end of the presentations. I'm now going to pass you over to Adrian O'Donoghue, who will take you through the key eligibility criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. So what I will do is I'm going to take you through just an overview of the scheme, who is eligible, who is ineligible, and ultimately how much funding can be awarded. So the first one is eligible business categories. So you must be approved, registered or approved accommodation provider. So that includes hotels, guest houses, holidays, youth hostels, caravan and camping, and self-catering. And importantly, you must be on or have applied to Fall to Ireland's National Quality Assurance Framework by the 23rd of July 2021, when the Minister announced the funding. Also, holiday camps, B&Bs, historic housing, self-catering, and the Fall to Ireland Welcome Standard. So are all eligible under the scheme. And ineligible categories, so we'll include marinas. So that's such as tourism infrastructure, such as moorings or berthage, is not eligible. Campus accommodation and student accommodation is also not included, on the basis that this accommodation is not primarily for tourist use. Public bodies, any business that is owned and operated or direct funding from public bodies are ineligible to apply. So examples of the below publicly, of any of the public bodies that could possibly have accommodation. So going through the other qualifying criteria. So the business types, we've gone through those. So the minimum turnover. So you must have generated 50,000 euro in 2019 from your business. And thirdly, you must have had a decrease of 75% in average monthly turnover. So that is over the period comparing how you performed in the calendar year 2019 to the period from June 2020 to May 2021. So Linda will talk you through a little bit how that will work, but that's an important consideration that you're down that level of funding. Fourthly, you must have completed or commit to completing and adhering to Fall to Ireland's COVID-19 Safety Charter. And you must intend to resume trade in normal conditions in 2022 or when it's safe to do so. So I know a lot of you will have opened, but this scheme is aiming to contribute to your survival or your continuity towards 2020, towards the end of 2021 and ultimately enable you to be ready for 2022. It is a contribution to that, to you in terms of that funding. So importantly then, how are we going to allocate this funding? So our aim is to be as equitable as possible and fairly distribute this funding. So we have 20 million, a minimum of 20 million committed, ring-fenced for the accommodation sector. And funding will be provided on the basis of the number of units per applicant. So what does that mean? So that means that if I'm a hotel, a unit is considered to be a bedroom. If it's caravan and camping, it's considered to be a pitch. So if I'm a hotel and I have 50 bedrooms, I have 50 units. So I'll explain that to you a little bit more. But there's two other categories that we've created an approach here so that we can give equity across the scheme. So if you look at hostels, what we have said is if you have 4 bed spaces, that equates to 1 bedroom. So on our own system, we'll have all this information, but it is on the basis of bed spaces for hostels. So we're going to convert that into 1 bedroom, so 1 unit. Then equally on the self-catering side, whereby at the moment we have details of the entire property, we will be seeking from you the number of bedrooms. So again, we can convert the number of bedrooms in the property, if it's 1 bedroom or 3 bedrooms, again into a unit. So the total fund available will be divided by the total number of eligible units. So I'll explain that a little bit more. And then the max funding per legal entity is €800,000 in this scheme. Okay, so let's look at an example of this. So from a macro perspective, we assume an estimated 2,000 eligible applicants. Now, whether they meet all of the criteria, there certainly is within these cohorts that are eligible to apply. And we assume an estimated 80,000 units across these 2,000 properties or applications. So we have a pot of €20 million. What does that mean? So if we, as a result of this application process, end up with having 80,000 units brought into us, that will equate to 250,000 per unit. So simply put, if you are a 100-bed hotel, and on the basis of those assumptions above, which can change, you will receive €25,000. So again, if you're a bed and breakfast and you have 6 beds, that will be €1,500. And equally, if you were a hostel and you had 16 bed spaces, that would convert into 4 units, and therefore 4 by 250. So you'd end up, I think, at, as my maths there, €1,000. So it's important as well to consider that not everybody will apply. So, and because this is a pot of funding, it's on the basis, I suppose, of everybody being in. So we won't be making payments until everybody is in and the closing date has been completed. And once that closing date is completed, we then need to make sure that the checks are okay, that everybody is in. So we'll talk to you a little bit about when we envisage payment occurring. When we can clarify this a little bit further as we go through the Q&A. So ultimately, this is all about your share of the overall accommodation sector, and proportionately we're awarding funding on the basis of that, and then ultimately on the number of applications that come in. So if you have multiple properties or multiple locations, applications are to be submitted per legal entity. So in some cases that might be groups, so you might be a group structure, so we'll look for you to submit on a group basis. But if not and they're individuals, we look for you to submit individually. And state aid rules apply. So the maximum funding in this scheme is €800,000, and if you've received other funding across other state funding, which excludes CRSS or PUB, they're not included in this. It's any of the EU temporary state aid funding. That's up to 1.8 million. So €800,000 in this scheme, and then accumulation of 1.8 million if you receive funding in other schemes. So the application process will open tomorrow and will close on Friday the 17th of September. And I'd urge you to make sure that you're in, because we need it's really important that you're in on time so that we can close the door on this, and then we can calculate the actual values that will be arrived at for each individual accommodation provider. Applications can be made through the portal, so it's, again, I'll come back to this, but it's important to ensure that you get your information right. This is a lighter touch application form, so it should be something that you should have information to hand, and it shouldn't take too long for you to complete. So on that basis, I'm going to hand over to Linda, who's going to talk you through the application process and how to apply.
So thank you very much. My name is Linda, and I'm going to walk you through the application process for this scheme. Just to go through what the application looks like, how to find it, how to move through the application form, and just recap then on the information that's needed to submit the application and to try and make that as clean as possible so that we can move into the evaluation stage. So I'm going to start with a live demonstration and run through that presentation if I can. Great. And I'll come off camera for you here now. So I hope everybody can see my screen. I hope everybody is familiar with the trade portal screen. I think you all probably are. So once you log in, you'll be able to get to the checkout available funding. It's right in the center. If you're not familiar with this screen, you can, go into the Fáilte Ireland website, into the trade portal login, and set yourself up from there. If you have any difficulty in setting yourself up here, our colleagues in customer support will be able to help you out. So once you're through and you're into the trade portal, and you can go to the available funding tab, either here or at the top, create a new application, or if you've saved it and you're returning to it, you'll click in here for funding schemes to find the partially started application form. So you'll select which one's available to you. For you, it'll be just the one. I have a few more up on my screen here, but for you, it'll be just the one. And you select on that, and it'll take you through into the application form proper. So the application form, when it goes live tomorrow, will also have a link through to the scheme guidelines. We don't have that available now, but there will be a hyperlink here that you'll be able to click through just to refresh your memory. As Adrian mentioned, the cohorts that we are looking for in this scheme, hotels, guest houses, youth hostel, camping caravan, they're all listed here, along with the rest of the criteria, the eligibility criteria around the downturn in turnover, the minimum turnover, the intention for resumption of trade, and that you've completed or will complete the Fáilte Ireland Safety Charter. Any questions on the eligibility, any questions on the application form at all, you'll be able to click the customer support hyperlink here to email them. That's available on each page of the application form. And again, we will have scheme guidelines and FAQs available to click through on. This is page 1 of 7, and I hope now this will demonstrate that it's a reasonably straightforward form in order just to apply into us. So the first page has 7 questions on it. It's a drop-down box. What is your business category of your primary business? You may be somebody who has a B&B and a campsite, or has, a guest house and a self-catering unit. Just select one for me, please. Just select your primary business. You'll list here whether or not you're statutory or non-statutory, and then you'll click through just to confirm the rest of the information is correct and that you understand. 1.6 is an interesting one. That is that some applications will be selected for a detailed review. We'll come to this at the end, but if you're selected for a detailed review, you will need the following information: financial statements from 2019 through to June 2021, tax return or proof of charity status as applicable, and along with any other documentation that is required by the evaluators. So we'll talk about this a little bit more towards the end, but it's just to note that while this information is not required for the application, there will be a detailed review taken from some applicants. So once you're happy enough with that and you've selected all of that, you move into the next page. This is just an information page. It outlines what's needed for this application in terms of your tax reference number, a charity number if you have it, or your CRO number. It also calls out what will be needed if your application is selected for that review. Under state aid rules, large and medium-sized enterprises more than 3 years old cannot have been an undertaking in difficulty before 2019. So that basically means you cannot have entered insolvency. If you're a large or medium-sized enterprise, broadly, that's for any business with more than 50 employees, broadly, we will need to see validation from your auditor or your accountant to that end. And finally, we'll need from everybody a bank header statement, and that's just to verify where the grant payment is going. Again, just tick the box to confirm all of that. Page 3 is very straightforward. This is the applicant business details. So really, it's who you are. It's if you've got a business description you need to tell us about. If you're part of a group, this information goes in here. The name of the person dealing with the application, how to reach you, contact number, email address. The email address will also, you'll also receive upon submission of the application form an email directly to this email address confirming that we've received it. And then the rest of your contact details, your business address, website if you have it, charity number, tax reference number. So just the general information pertaining to your business. You can save or save and exit and return at any time. Page 4 then is for state aid. So there's 2 points to this. One is to let us know that you're not an undertaking in difficulty, and we have the business definitions listed here: micro, small, medium, and large. For the purposes of state aid and for the purposes of the state aid rules, the medium and the large need to tell us that they are not in insolvency proceedings. So we do have an upload here for that. So you select your business size, you select that you're not an undertaking in difficulty, and you upload your information here if it's applicable to you. The second part of this is the state aid declarations. So we do need to know what state aid you've received in the past. This is important as we start approaching, should some businesses start approaching state aid caps. So there's a cap on the amount of money any one business can receive in this EU state aid temporary framework. So we do need to capture that. So that information that we need is the Restart Grant. And some of you will have received the B&B Restart Grant, for example, the Adaptation Fund. Maybe you're in receipt of the Coach scheme or the Inbound Agent scheme or a previous business tourism continuity scheme. You may have received the SBAS scheme from the Department of Trade and Employment. We do not need to know if you've received CRSS, EWSS or TSS. That is not something that needs to be declared here. But we do need to know if you've received any other funding through the state aid temporary framework. We have a free type text box down here that you can input. You can input here what you've received. That's great. We'll be able to note it. It's not something that's going to come off any grant payment for this scheme unless you're starting to hit it's only going to be taken into consideration if you hit the cap. So once you're happy with that, save and continue. Page 5 is your payment details. So this is important that we have this information correct. This is where the payment will be made to. So we need your business bank account name. We need your BIC code. We need your IBAN number. We also need a bank statement header. And this verifies the previous information that you've shared with us. We do not need to see a statement, a full statement. We do not need to see transactions. Please don't be worried about any of that. That's not something we need to see. It's the detail at the top that shows us the IBAN, the BIC, and the business account. So we can just check all of that it's correct and that there isn't an incorrect number in the BIC or something like that. So again, once you're happy, you save and continue. And you'll see the same. At the top of every page, there's a link through to the customer support. Page 6 is your commercial details page, and I have an error. Love technology. I'll see if I'm able to move through the page. This isn't easy to see. This is the information that we need, though, on your 2019 financial information, your 2020 turnover. I'm so sorry, this is very difficult to see. And this is also where we're going to ask you to upload your information on your numbers, your bedroom numbers, your self-catering, to give us your property and then your bedrooms. And for your hostels, if you can see that, that's for your hostel providers, for your bed spaces and your calculated bedrooms then from that. If there's a variance there, you do need to let us know. I am unable to do anything with this page, so I'm very sorry. 6.1 asks if it's an individual or a group is the question you can't see there. If you're a group and you've got more than one property, you only need to submit the one application form if it's the same business entity. And once you click in here to group, a new page will come up. We'll ask you to download an Excel worksheet, which is available in the blue box here, or we can email it to you. And essentially, it has all of this information. So the units, the comparable units if you're a hostel, the turnover for 2019, the turnover by month for 2019, the average turnover for month by 2019 and 2020 into 2021. And we ask you just to list that out for each property. So it's a much more efficient way than having to go through this page each and every time. So this will be a lot clearer when the application form is available to you tomorrow. Once you can move through that, you come into the declarations page, and there's 24 declarations, so I would urge you to read them. I know it's long, but it is important that you're aware of that, you confirming that you've read the terms and conditions, we're confirming that you're tax compliant, commitment to operate when you're able to do so, the COVID safety charter, and that you understand our data protection and freedom of information. So there's just a few bits in there that need to be submitted. And once you're ready to submit, click the submit button. An email will go to you from the email address that you've provided. And then we have just a note here at the end just to acknowledge that it's been received, that your application has gone through. This one is for a different scheme. It's not the tourism scheme, as the accommodation scheme, as I can't move through that page. So it's just to show you what that looks like so you're familiar with it. So I think that's it for the application form. We might move through now, and if I can come back off this and bring myself back on screen. So just to reconfirm what's needed. It's a light touch, as Adrian said. For quite a few applicants, that will just be what you need to do. It's self-declaration through the form. However, we will be selecting, using audit methodology, we'll be selecting a certain number of people that will have to provide us with further information. That further information will be your 2019 statements, your 2020, 2019, 2021 management accounts, and your tax return. But for everybody, we'll need your tax reference number, your charity number, if that's applicable to you, your company registration number, if that's applicable to you, an accountant's letter, if you're a medium or a large enterprise, and the value of any state aid that you received to date. Everybody will need to provide us with a picture of their bank header. I would urge that everybody has this information to hand when you're applying. It'll just make everything so much easier. As Adrian said earlier, we cannot evaluate until the scheme is closed. So we do need to make sure that everybody has the information into us. So what state aid should be declared? So I touched on this in the application form there on page 4. We do need you to declare to us what you have received. So here's a list of some of the schemes that may be applicable to some of the people that are applying here. There will be a full list available of all schemes that have been run throughout the country this year. So Restart Grant, Adaptation Fund. I know particularly these are two that people will have received from. You just need to declare that to us. The Coach Tourism Scheme, the previous business continuity schemes, part of your business may have been through that. Again, you just need to let us know. We do not need EWSS, any PUP payments. We don't need CRSS. That is not anything that we need to see. So just to recap here, the only way we can accept applications is through the trade portal. Please make sure that you're up and ready on the trade portal. You should be, but if you aren't, please make sure that you are. If you have any difficulty, email customer support. If you have any difficulty in accessing the application form or being able to move through it, please email customer support. You can save the application as you're going along. I know it's busy now, and there's a lot of domestic tourism and a lot of places are open. So if you don't have the time to get through the application form in one go, you can save it. But our closing date is the 17th of September. So I would urge that you start that application early if possible. And you'll receive a receipt then, just ensuring that you know that you've received we've received the submission. And that's it from me. So I think we'll welcome back some of my colleagues, and we've got some questions and answers.
Perfect. Hi, Linda. Linda, if you could stay on with me, please. And if I could ask Jenny and Adrian to join us also for the live Q&A. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Jenny. Great. Thanks a million. We have a lot of questions to get through this afternoon, so we'll go ahead straight away. Jenny, the first question there, I'm going to put it to you. If my application is successful, when can I expect payment?
Okay, so good question. I suppose as Adrian's kind of explained, the application opens on the 5th of August and it closes on the 17th of September. And the way we've designed the scheme is to be this kind of pot of money, and it's really about trying to share that pot against with every applicant. So the challenge here is that the weakest link will define the payment date. So when we look at the application process, so Linda's gone through that with you in detail, the ask of all of you is to review this webinar before you do your application and ensure that you provide all of the details and the supporting documentation that is required. If they do that, then the payments will actually come shortly after the 17th of September, because what we have to do once the closing date comes in, we have to evaluate all of those applications and approve them. However, what we have found in our experience from the other schemes is that applicants do regularly submit incomplete applications, or they don't attach the required supplementary information. So, and the process then of Fáilte Ireland chasing up with those applicants to get the information can delay the process significantly. So at the moment, our thought is that if we have a closing date of 17th of September and that everybody does fill in and complete their applications effectively, that we would be hoping to actually make payments in November. That is dependent on the quality of the applications that we get. So our ask to everybody on the call is to make sure that you look through this webinar again, to think about what needs to be submitted, make sure that you double check it, and if you have any questions, just to clarify those. But once we get complete applications in for the 17th of September, we will do our best to get the payments out in November.
Great. Thanks for that, Jenny. Thanks for that. Adrian, can I give this one to you? What should I include in my turnover figures?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it relates to anything related to the business that you're running. So if it's a hotel, it's any of the elements of that hotel, or any of the elements. And I suppose so if that's bar and restaurant, that's included, and any other elements that you can think of. I suppose it's important that there is, it's related specifically. If you have activities or if you have an attraction as part of what you're doing, that needs to be separate, and we are running a separate attractions and activities scheme. So it's important just to bear that in mind when you're looking at that. I know a couple of questions have come in, so it is related to the accommodation and everything that's encompassing in that accommodation that you have. Also, just to say that while we are looking at a declaration-based scheme, here we are going to be reviewing each one of the financials. So what comes in, we'll look to see. We know the sector pretty well, so we'll have a sense of where the revenue levels, should be, or where there might be a decrease. So we will be reviewing, and we will be undertaking some further deep dives where there's kind of maybe questions coming up, or if there's sampling that will occur as well. Our aim is to get these, get this process done as quickly as possible. But if something comes up that seems unreasonable or a little bit both ways. We've seen it both ways where you've misrepresented yourself too high, but sometimes it has occurred more frequently than you think that people have underrepresented what they have. So we're looking on both counts for those. So while we're trying to be efficient, we will be paying close attention as we go through the process. So there's two checks for us. One is as we go, and we will deep dive, but equally there's a post-grant audit that will occur that's required of any public sector funding. So there'll be a certain level of sampling will occur, and we'll do a range of that after payments have been made.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for that. Next question: what's the difference between statutory or non-statutory? Jenny, can you explain what this means, please?
Sure, I can do. Yes, so statutory are those businesses that have are prescribed under the Tourist Traffic Act. So terms like hotels, guest houses, youth hostels, so they're prescribed terms and have a clear definition. Non-statutory are properties that are not using a prescribed term, and that might be because they don't meet some of the regulations associated with the prescribed terms, or businesses such as B&Bs or the Welcome Standard properties. And the Welcome Standard properties these are kind of unique or quirky properties that either do not want to or cannot use the prescribed terms, and the focus of these properties is really the customer journey, and it includes businesses such as glamping sites, accommodation over restaurants that don't fit into any category, but it also includes properties like the Dean and the Hendricks, who can't call themselves hotels because of the floor size. So hopefully
Perfect.
that helps.
Thanks for that explanation, Jenny. Next question, Linda, can I give this one to you? Is the scheme available to beneficiaries of previous schemes?
Yes, it is. So this is, as was outlined earlier, this is part of the overall business continuity fund that we received as part of Budget 2021. And anybody who has been through other iterations of the scheme or have been through other beneficiaries of other schemes, such as the Restart or Adaptation Fund, are absolutely welcome to apply here.
Great, thanks.
And could I add to that as well, Gail, just to go back on the revenue or the income piece, any monies that you have received from CRSS or any monies they receive from PUP, they're not to be included. So it really is from turnover activity, services provided, that needs to be in your revenue. So don't include CRSS or PUP.
Okay, perfect.
And just also to say, sorry, Gail, to say that if you have received, if you were a beneficiary of a previous scheme, in particular a previous scheme, I suppose that we've run this year, that won't be coming off your grant. So, or whatever you receive out of this scheme if you're eligible. So we would welcome everybody and encourage everybody who's eligible to apply.
Great, thanks, Linda and Adrian. Adrian, this one for you. Over what time period must the grant be spent?
Yeah, so the intent is to contribute to expenses for the next 6 months as opposed to year end. So ideally, that's when we want to see these monies used. So it is to that end. Okay.
And this is linked probably to a question just previous to this, Linda. But you might just clarify again for me.
Sure.
I am a B&B owner and have received the Adaptation Fund and Restart grant. Does this exclude me from this scheme?
No. It does not. It does not exclude you from this scheme if you meet the rest of the eligibility criteria. And I suppose that is important. This scheme has eligibility criteria that stands on its own, and you must meet those. But that does not preclude you from applying. And if you've received monies in the past, that's absolutely fine. And that will not be deducted if you're deemed eligible from any payment that's made through this scheme.
Okay, perfect. I see that we've lost Jenny there, so we're trying to get Jenny back. But I'll continue on. Linda, sorry, another one for you. Financial one. What if my financial year doesn't run from January to December?
Okay, that's okay. We will ask you to declare your 12 months from January to December in 2019. When it comes to providing financial statements, we'll need you to provide the statements or the set of accounts that cover that period. So that may mean that you need to give us 2 sets. But that's absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. You don't need to do anything other than provide us with the information you already have that covers that time frame.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Next question. I think there's two questions in the one here, Linda. Can you confirm the maximum and minimum grant aid and that the 5% of the turnover is on the full 12 months turnover?
The grant is based on your units. So the grant is paid out, it's, as we said before, it's a defined pot, and it's paid out on the units that you have, the bedrooms, the pitches. In the case of hostels, you do need to do some conversion to come back. So the minimum will probably be somewhere around €1,000, and the maximum can be no more than 800,000 for one legal entity. So in a group situation, that will be your cap if you're a particularly large group. You may or may not reach that depending on the number of units that you have. You might have a number of properties, but you may not have a huge number of units.
Okay.
But the maximum grant payable to any one entity is 800,000. I'm not sure about the 5%.
Yeah, we might come back to that question. Maybe we might seek a little bit more clarity on that, Linda, and we'll come back to it if we have time at the end. Next question. Sorry, Linda, I'm going to keep you. I own more than one property. Do I have to do a separate application for each, or can multiple properties be on the one form?
Okay, so this unfortunately was the screen that hung on me. Absolutely. If you are a group application or applying for more than one property, let's put it that way, that can all go on the one application form. You will need to tell us what your primary business is. You'll need to select that at the start. But we will have an Excel template that is downloadable that you can call out all of your either group properties or all of the properties that you're applying for, if it's not like an absolute group. So maybe you have a B&B and a campsite, or a campsite and self-catering, and you've got two separate entities that are registered, but in the one legal entity. You can go ahead and put all of those in the one application form and then fill out this Excel spreadsheet, and it covers the same information that's in the application form, but just much more convenient for multiple entries to be able to capture through all of that. That is downloadable through the application form, that Excel spreadsheet. Any difficulty in downloading it or seeing it or getting it, and we'll email it to you. That's no problem.
Thanks for that, Linda. I'll give the next one to you also, Linda. How will the grant be paid? Sorry, I'm not picking on you. How will the grant be paid?
The grant will be paid through your bank account. So you will give us those bank account details in your application form. We will need to check those against the bank header statement that you've provided. So that's why we look for all of that information. We do need to make sure that it's correct and that the payment, if it's made, is going to the right bank account and into the right direction. So it'll be made into the bank account. It'll be paid into that bank account that you give us.
Perfect. Perfect. Adrian, one for you. What would the cap for a business be if you're already won a grant on the first business continuity scheme?
Okay, so for this scheme, it's €800,000 as a maximum that you can receive as either as a group or as an individual entity, depending how you operate. The maximum you can receive is 1.8 million under the EU temporary state aid framework. So it's an accumulation of both of those. So I think it's unlikely that the threshold will be breached, given that for the majority, this will be kind of a first payment through business continuity funding for the broader accommodation sector.
Okay, thank you for that, Adrian. Linda, what documents can be accepted as financial statements for the application?
That actually very much depends on the business type that you are. Some of the business types have different requirements. If you're a sole trader, we'll accept your profit and loss. A company will have some company accounts prepared, and that's absolutely fine. We'll accept those as well. So we're not looking to get anything from you that you don't have. We will accept the trading accounts that you're using, the P&L that you're using, or that you've declared and closed off for 2019. If you're selected for the deeper review and the deeper evaluation, the evaluation team will be in touch with you about that. And if they have any questions, they will go through that with you. As Adrian mentioned earlier, we have actually come across quite a few who've under-declared themselves. And we'll see that as well if that's the case.
Okay, thanks for that, Linda. Adrian, can you please explain again how the grant is allocated? I'm a hostel owner.
Okay. Perfect. So again, And it'll be clear as well when you're filling out the application form. So the basis of the grant is to be awarded on a share of units available to the market. And essentially, if you're a hostel, we've taken an approach whereby if you have 20 beds, for example, we will equate that to be 5 units, so 4 divided by 4. So those 5 units, and then ultimately when we get the total units of everybody that has applied into the scheme, the value of 1 unit will be multiplied by the units that you have. It's more complicated for hostels and a little bit more complicated for self-catering. But ultimately, again, if you equate that back to 100-bed room at the maybe the minimum is around €250, but ultimately it depends on the number of applicants. So that number can rise, and we won't really know that until everybody is in. The reason we're allocating it on this way is to ensure that everybody there's an equitable approach to this as best that we can. It's difficult to provide, the amount of funding that we'd like to provide to this. So this is the best way that we can, and ultimately, the less people that apply, the less people that are in on time, the more money for others. But ultimately, we want the majority to benefit from this, if they're entitled to do so, if they meet the criteria. So there's a little bit of a process to go through, and we've worked this in other schemes before, and it has been successful. But as Jenny alluded to, it's important that you get your details in, that everybody, and that's why we've taken the self-declaration approach with the checks as we go within realistic parameters, which should allow us to get that right. So we will have a team in behind this to make sure that when you apply to us, if there's any issues, that we'll come back to you to clarify. So the sooner you can come back to us and clarify, the sooner the scheme gets closed off, and the sooner everybody can get paid.
Great, thanks a million, Adrian. Thanks for that. A financial one, Linda. I'm going to give this to you. If I have a non-tourism turnover in 2020, will this exclude me from the scheme?
No, it won't. We're looking for your 2019 turnover, and we'll look for an average of that across the 12 months. And then we'll look for an average of your turnover, that business activity related turnover from June through to June 2020 through to May 2021. So you just need to take out any of your absolute non-tourism revenue. If you also have a grocery shop, just don't include that. But your tourism and your business activity, please give us that detail. And if that's zero, if you didn't open it all last year and that turns out to be zero on an average month, that's fine. That's what we need to know.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Thanks for that. Another financial one, Linda, this one for you also. Is 2019 turnover relating to the business financial year or the calendar year?
We're looking for the calendar year, please. So as I said earlier, we're well aware that some people don't operate in a calendar year for their accounts. We will need you to extrapolate that information, though, across your 2 sets of accounts and give us one number for the calendar year, January to December. And the second question that we ask you then is to divide that by 12 and give us a monthly average. And then if requested, you'll need to provide us with the 2 sets of accounts that got you to that number.
Great.
Just on that one, Gail, just to clarify as well, what we're looking at is your average monthly comparison. So in there's a 2 12-month period, average monthly is the comparison. So it's 12 months in 2019, and there's 12 months over the period June to May, June of last year to May of this year. So we will ask you for the whole number. We'll ask you divided by 12, and the application form will guide you on that kind of journey, and then to ensure that that's your 75% down, that then makes you eligible. So just for clarity.
And I suppose also just for clarity, if you're a group, or if you have more than one property or more than one product, let's say, if that criteria only applies to one of you, say you've got 3 properties, a camping site, a B&B, and a self-catering, and one of them doesn't meet the criteria, please do apply anyway. Please do apply for the other properties. So we'll just remove the one that doesn't fit the criteria, and we'll keep going.
Great. Adrian, there's a few questions coming in to do with the minimum turnover threshold of 50,000. So I'm just going to pick one of those questions. My business does not meet the minimum turnover threshold of 50,000. Am I eligible for any support?
Okay, so under this scheme, €50,000 is deemed to be the threshold for strategic tourism businesses. It's a figure that has been agreed with the department, and we've applied across all of our other 3 or 4 schemes that we've run already this year and across other schemes across last year. This question has come up also in the activities and accommodation providers. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at what other schemes that you might be eligible for. That if you have less than 50,000, we'll talk to some of our departmental colleagues and we'll put that up on the FAQs. We're not 100% certain that there is one that we can talk to right now, but we think there might be, so let's bear with us and we can come back. But specifically for this scheme, it's €50,000 is determined to be the threshold.
Great, thanks for answering that, Adrian. Next question, Linda, actually. If you're already getting CRSS payments, are you eligible to apply for this scheme?
Yes. We don't need you to declare any CRSS to us or any other of like the PUP payments, EWSS, TWSS. In previous iterations of these schemes that the first scheme that we ran, for example, was very much about filling and bridging that CRSS gap. And you did need to declare it. You do not need to declare it here. That is not something that needs to be factored into your figures or your revenue figures at all. Neither is any previous grant payment. So that is not something that needs to be factored into your turnover figures. Your turnover figures is specifically related to your business. Okay. The activity that your business generates, or the turnover generated by your business activity. It's probably the better way to put that.
Great, thanks, Linda. Thanks for that. Adrian, this one, I'll give it to you. When verifying if turnover is down 75%, do you include grant revenue such as Restart and CRSS?
So, good question. Again, no. If it's not related directly to remuneration for services provided, it shouldn't be included. So again, that includes PUP, CRSS, any government funding that wasn't related to services provided. You make sure that you keep that off of your total turnover.
Okay, thank you. Linda, do you need to know the amount of Restart grant you received, kind of related to a previous one?
Yeah, you need to declare that to us on page 4. You know, I know that that's not a massive amount of money or masses of money that's coming through in this when we talk of state aid capping 1.8 million, but we do need to know what other state aid has been flowing through. So yes, please declare that. It doesn't come off, and if you're eligible and there's a grant payment to be made, it won't come off that grant payment.
Okay, thank you. And we did mention an accountant's letter previously or during your slides, Linda.
Yeah.
What does the accountant's letter have to contain?
So the purpose of the accountant's letter is around the state aid rules. So for the COVID-19 temporary state aid framework, you may not have been an undertaking in difficulty. You cannot have entered insolvency by 2020. So this is to support businesses that weren't in any other trouble otherwise. So if you're a medium or a large and enterprise or business, and that is listed, it's indicated on the application form and in the support notes for the application form exactly what those parameters are, but broad strokes, it's more than 50 employees. Broadly, there's a little bit more to it than that. If that is the case, we will need an accountant's letter verifying that your business was not in difficulty at the end of 2019, that your business is healthy, that there was no issue otherwise that has transpired now. That's what we need to see in that letter. The accountants are very familiar, from my experience of it, the accountants are very familiar with that. It's a 2-line letter that they're comfortable with the state of your business, and that's all we need. That's all we need to see, just that they've not entered any sort of insolvency proceedings prior to COVID-19.
Great. Thanks for that, Linda. Next one, Adrian, can I give you this one? Is related to theatres. Is theatres income treated as tourism income? Sorry.
No, it's one of the ineligible categories. It doesn't fit under our tourism remit, and the department, our own department, who have arts included, have schemes that they have run. I think the Arts Council might have as well. So we don't. That's not part of the remit of this scheme.
Okay, Adrian, this one for you, if you don't mind also.
Yeah.
If we have a hotel and golf course, do we qualify for the grant if we have already received the CRS grant?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. Again, I suppose it's probably the element we've covered. The CRSS, you're okay. And I suppose if you are a golf course that's separate to a hotel, we need to just make sure that there's a separation that occurs there, because the golf is it's included in our activities scheme. So you want to have a look at that just to make sure that that's separated, which we focus there on green fees rather than membership fees or membership competitions. So I suppose a point of separation is important there for us to understand that. And again, when you submit your business, we know the sector, we know most of the hotels, not them all, but hopefully we know most of them. So when we do look at them, we will be able to see. And again, this is one of the examples where Linda spoke to, where you might be over or underrepresented, and we may be able to advise. Both schemes are going to be running in parallel pretty much, so we can keep an eye out for that to ensure that they're balanced in that way and that it's correct.
Thanks, Adrian. Thanks for that. I have a seasonality related one, Adrian, that you might take also. If you are seasonal and only open 7 months of the year, does that make a difference? We are a little note. We are a small remote hotel.
Okay, so it doesn't make a difference really. It just makes a difference in terms of your ability to have, if you've generated 50,000 in 2019 and you're down, that's fine. It does how long you're open for doesn't particularly matter. So no, it's not really an issue. I don't think there's anything else on that, Linda, is there? That's kind of it.
No, there isn't. There's going to be a lot of folks out there that were not able to trade. There will be people who were able to trade for various reasons, and there'll be people that weren't able to trade. If you weren't able to trade, that's absolutely fine. You're not precluded from this. If you were able to trade and you can still demonstrate that you're 75% down, again, you're still eligible for this fund.
Great. Linda, another one for you. If we are a new accommodation provider in 2020, are we eligible?
You need to be able to demonstrate €50,000 worth of turnover in 2019. So, no, unfortunately is the short answer to that. This is comparative back to the pre-COVID situation.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that, Linda. Adrian, regarding declaration of previous grant aid, is this just grants received since March 2020?
Yeah, so what we're looking for there is under the temporary state aid framework that whatever you might have received funding, and most of that started around, well, maybe a little bit beyond March, maybe into April or so, maybe May or June. So it's kind of from that period onwards. Linda had a page up which kind of identified the various schemes that you could have been funded under. So have a look at that when you go through, and most of those kind of begun around June, kind of maybe onwards. The temporary state aid framework is, just for clarity, it is a temporary solution by the EU which allows us to fund more than we could technically do. So as such, towards the operations of businesses in general, I think it was around €200,000, but that limit has been increased given where we're at. And right now, that only extends until the end of the year. So we're operating under those parameters, and this scheme is declared under that, and all of the funds under this will be will be spoken to, will be highlighted. And I suppose that's maybe just an important one to talk to. Our requirements out of this scheme within 12 months of providing funding, or to the end of the year, whichever comes first, probably the end of the year will come first, is that we need to declare who has received funding from us. If it's commercially sensitive in terms of the level of funding, we can remove that. But we will. If you are successful, you will be named on a public list. So it's the same with everybody else, but it's a requirement of this, and we'll need to report in then into the EU. I suppose our intention is to show this in terms of bands, but given that this is not commercially sensitive as such, it's more about the number of units that you have in the business. I think we may be able to, we may need to show that, but I think what I would like to do is just to say we funded these amount, and within these bands, these what they were, and just to have the names separate. But you as a beneficiary will be named, but as is the case with everybody else in the state under this temporary state aid framework.
Great, thanks, Adrian. I do see one or two more questions being typed in, so I'll just wait for the questions to finish. I do have one here. If my application is successful, when can I expect payment? Linda, I'll give that to you.
You can give that to me. Adrian, feel free to chime in. As this is a defined scheme, this is a departure from the previous schemes that we've run and that we've worked on, where we've been able to start the evaluation piece of it before the closing date. We are not able to do that here. We must close this scheme to see how many people have applied and how many people are eligible before we can start working through the detail of the payments. We are expecting a huge volume. You can see that from Adrian's slide. We're expecting a huge volume here, and each one of those, whilst not everybody's going to be subjected to the deep dive of the evaluation, everybody will need to be checked for eligibility, and that's just going to take time. And we are aiming the very best we can to have payments out in November. If we can do it sooner, we will do it sooner, but it is going to be dependent on, as I think Jenny said, it's the weakest link will slow everything down here. We need to have the right information in from people. We need their application forms to be as accurate as possible. If they're selected, or whoever is selected for the detailed evaluation, they need to try and work with us as quickly as possible, get the information in, and work with the evaluating team to move through that as quickly as possible, so that we can then calculate eligibility against our applicants, our number of units, and our available funding, and work that out. So we'd love to have it away as soon as possible. We anticipate November.
Great. Thanks for that, Linda. And I see that we've only just a few minutes left, but we might get another one in if you don't mind, Adrian. So this could potentially be our last question. So we are a hostel. We have not opened since October 2019. We have not done the safety charter yet, as we hope to do this prior to opening in May 2022. Are we eligible?
Okay, good question. If you have, the first thing is look at the criteria. So the first thing is, have you generated 50K? The second thing is, in terms of the COVID charter, if you intend to do it, that's fine once you reopen. Now, in terms of the to open up again is another thing. Your intent to open up in 2022. This question actually came up in the earlier webinar as well. I feel that we would fund, you would be eligible, but obviously we would need to follow up on you on the fact that you did open. So we would ensure that in the post-grant audit that you would be included. So I think you can submit, and in the spirit of the scheme, you are closed on the basis of where we are at. We're going to contribute to your costs. And then if you reopen, I believe you will be eligible. But just make sure you just go through that tick list. Just have a look at what they are and make sure that you fulfill those. But other than that, I'd say, in the basis of the criteria, you would be meeting those. There's no reason to say that you wouldn't be one of the successful ones for funding here.
Great. We're just out of time, everybody. So Linda and Adrian, thanks a million for answering all those questions. We did lose Jenny. We didn't manage to get her back, but thanks again, Jenny, just in case you're listening back to the recording. If any more questions come in, we'll add them to the FAQ doc, which we'll put up on our Fáilte Ireland website from tomorrow. Just a reminder, the scheme is going live, as both Linda and Adrian said, at 12 noon tomorrow. Thanks a million for your interest and for tuning in, and hope you have a great evening. Thanks a million.
Thanks.